Hello, we're gonna get started in a couple minutes to just give everyone a chance to join. I think they might have exited. I don't see them anymore. Hey, I don't know if you heard me when you were on before, but we're just gonna get started in a couple minutes and just give everyone a chance to join. Okay, let's just give it like 2 more minutes and then I will start. I'm muted. Hi, we're just gonna start in 1 minute. I'm gonna get started. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ariel Gerstein. I'm Sustainability Program Administrator at the county. So today we're just gonna do a quick training on our new compost program that is launching at the Government Center on Monday. Before I turn it over to Tommy with scraps, just a quick note on locations. So this will be relevant depending where you sit. So there'll be a bin on each floor. So for 3, 4, and 5, they'll be in the combined big kitchens. And then on the second floor, they'll be closest to the facilities and fleet management office. And the first floor, the bin will be in the CED area. But if there is anywhere that you are interested in having additional bins, just let me know because we're kind of in pilot mode right now, and we potentially might expand to more locations in the future if there's interest. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Tommy to go over the composting rules.
Hi, everyone. This is just going to be super informal. I'm going to skip through a couple slides because a lot of them are tailored to our commercial members that are in Denver County and specific ordinances and policies that were recently passed there. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to just interrupt or just wait till the end and we can chat at the end. But very briefly, so Scrap started in 2017. You can see Christy Turner here. This is our CEO and founder. She started on electric bicycles, pretty much trying to, she had friends that wanted to compost and didn't have access to compost because a lot of municipalities back then didn't offer the services. So she started it on electric tricycle. You can see our organic diversions number based off month and year here on the top right. Quickly grew out of the phase of having electric bicycles because of the demand of people wanting to compost. This figure on the bottom right here, we're almost about to pass 9 million pounds of organics diverted, and that's all thanks to our members and new members like the Adams County Municipal Building. So we're super excited and grateful to have you composting and yeah, excited to see this number grow. So I'm not really going to get into this, but essentially the state of Colorado has a lot of room to grow when it comes to waste diversion based on the national average of the waste diversion rate. And when I speak of waste diversion, it's really only talking about the residential and commercial side of composting and recycling. But you can see in figure 2 here that there are a lot of municipalities and on the Front Range and on the mountain town that have waste diversion rates above the national average and some hovering right around it. So that's all to say that Colorado, you know, a really green, sustainable state, we want to see our waste diversion numbers being well above the national average. So lots of room for growth there. And this is the place to start. So this is based off Denver, but this is pretty standard throughout the country. Essentially, every 5 years, the city of Denver goes around and does an audit of a single family home's trash can. And essentially what they found in it is that about 75% of the material that a home is disposing of to the landfill could be diverted from the landfill, with about 50% of that being compostable material and 25% of that being recyclable. So if you think about it, I mean, you should be taking your compost and your recycling out way more frequently than you're taking your trash out. If you're composting correctly and you're recycling correctly, your trash shouldn't smell. It should be once every 2 weeks, depending on what you're disposing of in your home. This is specifically for Denver, so I'm just going to skip over that. So a lot of you might be familiar with what composting is. You might have done it before growing up, say if you grew up on a farm, or you might have used a service before similar to scraps. We just like to go into the basics and what we accept and what we don't accept, because composting is very different based off who your hauler is, where the material is going, and what the processor of the composting material, what they accept. And it's all based off the type of compost piles they make. So it could differ if you've done it before. But at the bare bones of composting, it is organics recycling. So we are managing the decomposition of all of this organic material. For example, if you get, you have a banana, you forget that it's on your counter, it starts turning black, it starts naturally decomposing. It's not going to turn into compost unless we build a proper compost pile with the proper proportions of materials and manage that decomposition to get it into that finished product. Compost is not a soil, it's a soil amendment. So we use it to amend the soil that we currently have with lots of benefits to it. So adding compost into your soil improves the health of soils, All the nutrients from that organic material that you put in the compost bin transfers into that finished product. All of that reduces the use of synthetic fertilizers because, like I said, you already have all of those nutrients in your compost, so you don't need to add any with these synthetic materials that they sell at box stores. Compost holds water really, really well. Reduces the use of having to water your plants or your garden as frequently as you would if you didn't use compost. It holds water. Um, it sucks CO2 from the atmosphere and stores it in the soil where it initially was meant to be. In turn, when you send organic material to the landfill, because it is an anaerobic environment and doesn't have access to oxygen, that's how landfills produce methane, mainly because of all of the food waste and the yard waste that we send there. So we don't want to do that. We want to do the opposite, uh, not create the methane by sending food waste to landfill, and also adding the finished product, that finished compost, back into our soils, back into our gardens, and into our lawn to reap those benefits as well. And I think that's something that really gets looked over in the composting process. Um, I know it differs. A lot of people live in apartments and don't have, a garden or a lawn to apply the compost. But if you do, applying finished compost into your soil or into your garden is just as important as diverting the material from the landfill. So just something to keep in mind. So a big update on the scraps front. So like I said, we started in 2017. We were initially just a hauler. So we were picking up the compost or the organic material from all of our members, and we were dropping it off at a processing facility. As of January this year, we recently just started processing a very small portion of the material we collect on our own. Right now, we have CESQ designation from the state of Colorado, which is just called conditionally exempt small quantity. And all that means is that we can only process a certain amount of cubic yards of material on site, but this has allowed us to really dial in our processes to properly make the good finished product that we want. So you can see this picture on the bottom right where it says ASP pile at scraps facility. This is a picture of our site here. We're using what's called an aerated static pile to make a compost. So rather than the standard most common pile where you have to turn your pile every 5 to 10 days to introduce oxygen and to get all of the material from the outside to the inside, you can see this pipe that's going in here. We're essentially forcing oxygen in with a blower and that perforated PVC pipe. This really allows our piles to heat up a lot quicker than your windrow would, that standard turning your compost pile. And it really shortens the amount of time from the start of the pile to the finished product. So essentially a compost pile is just your proper proportions of your carbon rich material, which is your brown material. So like your dried leaves, newspaper, shredded cardboard. If your cardboard, say like a pizza box, got greasy, then we would get that into our compost bin. And then your nitrogen rich material, which is really your really moist and your food waste material. We get the proper oxygen, the proper moisture, and it takes around 45 to 60 days from the compost pile being built to having that finished product being ready to be put back into your garden. So like I said earlier, if you've composted before at home or with another hauler, or if you live in the city of Denver or Boulder and have your municipality, what we accept here at Scraps might be different than what you might be used to. Because our piles reach certain temperatures, they reach above 131 degrees Fahrenheit for around 10 consecutive days, and it could even go anywhere up to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. We accept all food products in our compost bins, fruits and veggies, any sort of baked goods. We can accept meat, seafood bones, dairy, cheese, eggshells, all of that stuff. If you composted at home before, You don't really want to put meat or dairy in there because the piles don't really get hot enough and it attracts animals and stuff. But in our commercial piles, we could accept those. Our piles get hot enough, like I said, to be able to break all of that material down. On top of that, we accept paper products like paper towels, napkins, um, real cotton balls like wooden and bamboo stir sticks and chopsticks, coffee filters, uh, and like I said earlier, greasy pizza boxes. If you have cardboard that gets wet and greasy, then we can accept that. If it's not greasy or if it's not wet, it's better off just to be recycled. Um, you can see on the sort of in the middle on the left here that we also accept approved compostable products. And that's also something that a lot of different processors and different haulers throughout the Front Range and the state of Colorado are not accepting at the moment. We've done a lot of trials at our site here with these compostable products, and they're breaking down just fine. The state of Colorado just introduced a new law in July that just went into effect called the Truth in Labeling Act. And essentially, all that means is that a compostable product, say a compostable iced coffee cup or a hot coffee cup, will have to be properly labeled. So you will very clearly see this is a commercially compostable product, or it will have some sort of green line or stripe on it, so you can very easily tell the difference between a compostable coffee cup and say a Starbucks coffee cup. So that's all what we can accept in our compost bin. I'm going to switch over to what we cannot accept. I'm going to start with the most common things that we find that we label as contamination in our compost stream. I would say the number one thing, and probably the most annoying on the consumer side, is produce stickers. Produce stickers, unfortunately, are just plastic stickers, and they don't break down because they're not organic material. If you can just get into the habit of every time you have a banana or an apple, just peeling off that produce sticker, throwing it into the trash bin, and then properly disposing of the apple or banana or any other fruit or veggie you have into the compost bin. If it's something that goes bad and you don't have the chance to eat it, like I said, just taking that extra second to make sure you take the produce sticker off really, really helps. It helps also because produce stickers, with the heat of our compost piles, produce stickers will sort of crumble up into little balls. And our compost screen is a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. So because they crumble up into such small balls, when we screen our finished compost to get it down to size, those melted produce stickers will slide through the screen into that finished product. So if you've ever gotten finished compost before that has little plastic balls in it that you can't really tell what it is, it's most likely a produce sticker. I would say the second thing that we find in our compost bin are tea bags. Unfortunately, there is no policy nationwide when it comes to labeling something compostable. So there are a lot of brands out there. There's lots of greenwashing of products that say 99% plant-based material or that say compostable at home. If it doesn't say certified compostable and it doesn't have one of the brands or one of the certification companies that I'm going to show you on the next slide, then we unfortunately cannot accept it. So tea bags, even if they don't have a staple on it, even if they say they're compostable, unfortunately we cannot accept them in our compost stream because most tea bags, even when they say they are quote unquote compostable, they have a plastic lining in there so the bag doesn't break down when you're steeping your tea. In addition, like I said earlier, the difference between like a compostable coffee cup and a standard coffee cup, it gets confusing for a lot of folks because we do accept paper products like paper towels and napkins and stuff. But coffee cups, like the standard coffee cup that you would get at Starbucks, if you ever look inside of it when it's empty, it has a very thin plastic lining on the inside of the cup, and that just helps the coffee not seeping out of the cardboard. And that plastic lining, unfortunately, We can't accept plastic in our compost stream, and that contaminates it. So just some things to keep your eye on when you're composting. If you're already familiar with it, awesome. If you're new to composting, it's always beneficial to get yourself in the routine to just take a couple extra seconds when you're disposing of your material and making sure that things properly get sorted out. I would say the number one rule when it comes to composting is, especially if you're new to it, is when in doubt, just throw it out. I'm always here as a resource. I will pop my email in the chat here. If anyone ever has a question, you can always reach out to me. But if I don't get back to you by the time you're able to dispose of your thing, it's always best to throw it in the trash until you get the answer you're looking for. And I'll get into contamination. So I'm not really going to get too far into this, but essentially there are two certification companies that certify compostable products. One of them is BPI. BPI has their label on all of the products that they certify. So if you see a BPI, which is the Biodegradable Products Institute, on a compostable cup or a compostable fork, it is 100% compostable, and we accept it in our compost stream. The second being this logo right over here, the Composter Manufacturing Alliance, another one that you'll see on products. These are the two logos to look out for. If a product says that it is compostable and it doesn't have a BPI or CMA, Compost Manufacturing Alliance logo, we don't accept it in our stream. It's most likely a greenwash product. The biggest threat, like I sort of talked about in the compost stream, is contamination. Unfortunately, there's no technology in the composting world that's affordable that can sort through contamination. So when a load from our trucks get dropped off here, if our drivers aren't able to sort out the contamination when they're emptying the bins, and it comes to our site, it all needs to be manually picked out. So the first thing I do when we get a load from our truck here is I flatten all the material. I try to go through everything and pick everything out by hand. It's really not a fun job picking through a bunch of food waste, but it's my job and it is very necessary, and it really helps create a clean compost finished product. So you can see all of these pictures were taken by our drivers when we first started scraps in 2017. Glass, a lot of the produce stickers, sauce packets, shredded paper is one of those things that we can't accept, even though it's a paper product, because we never know if there's staples in there or if it had any sort of if it had any plastics on it or anything like that. And also feminine hygiene products. When we have members composting paper towels, it's just something that unfortunately we see in the bins often. So this just we keep this slide on the or at the end of our presentation, even though I've already talked about contamination, just as like a final reminder that taking the extra couple seconds when you're disposing of your material into the compost bin, just to make sure that there's no plastics or anything that's non-organic, meaning organic material, to properly make sure that you put that in the proper bin. We totally understand that composting is new to a lot of people. It's not going to be perfect. We're all just doing what we can to make it the world a better place. And if you accidentally contaminate the compost bin at first, totally okay. We'll do our part to make sure it gets out. But everything you can do, if you see someone, if you're in the break room and you see someone tossing something in there, just politely telling them, you know, like, hey, Tom said that that's actually not compostable, and that's something that is going to have to get picked out by him at the end of the stream. Yeah, any sort of verbal education, talking to your coworkers, taking that extra second before you dispose of anything in the compost stream really, really makes a difference. So yeah, that's really all I have does anyone have any questions about scraps or what we accept or just composting in general?
And I'm not sure if they can unmute. So if you have any questions, if you're able to unmute, you can do that. Or if you just want to put them in the chat, that's also fine.
Yeah, and I just added my email into the chat here. Feel free, I'll put my name as well. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions or comments or anything. We're here as a resource for anything you guys might need, even if it's I want to build a composting pile at home. Just reach out to us. We're happy to help in any way.
Looks like we have someone typing. So we'll see if there's a question. And there will be a flyer on each of the bins in the kitchens. So it should be fairly clear what we can compost. Oh, okay. Yeah, so how often will it be collected? So right now so what's happening is our environmental services staff through facilities is going to be collecting it twice a week. And then scraps is going to be outside at that point, and scraps is then going to haul it off. Yes. So we don't anticipate any smell issues, but if that did come about, then we will up the amount of times it's collected. But as Thomas told me previously, like really the only concerns with smell is if you're cleaning out like a work fridge or freezer. So if you're just throwing, you know, if you're throwing stuff in there kind of during the day, then it shouldn't be an issue. But that will definitely be monitored. And if there's any issues, then we will be hauling it to the outside bins more frequently. So appreciate that question. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was a thanks for that reminder. I would say if anyone ever plans to do, I don't know how that works in your building, but if anyone ever plans to initiate a fridge clean out of your break room, it's highly suggested to just try to work with the either Ariel or the environmental services team to just try to time up the fridge clean out to get that immediately outside into the compost bins, because the transfer of temperature for it being in a freezer or a refrigerator to being at room temperature, that's really what will immediately start to make the food waste smell. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, in my email, I have a sustainability email, sustainability@adcogov.org. Will be on all the flyers on the bin. So if there's any questions, you can also email me, or if you want to like schedule a more frequent pickup, if there is a freezer fridge clean out, then I'm happy to do that. All right. If there's nothing else, thank you so much for your time. And I'll be sending out this presentation. It'll also be on the internet. And yeah, look forward to this program launching next week. Thanks so much. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks everyone. I appreciate it. Have a great day.